Joining me now is trial attorney and legal analyst Misty Marris. Misty, you and I have been talking about this one. One of the questions that they returned yesterday was, will we be considered a hung jury if we agree on two of the charges, but not a third? The judge says that's theoretical. I can't answer that. How do you answer that? And what does it tell you about where things stand?
Yeah, Marky, this was a really interesting day yesterday. You know, there's about 16 hours of deliberation under the jury's belt now. And after day one, we were all waiting to see if there was an indication of what the jury was thinking. And then we got these jury questions. So 3 jury questions in the morning, and then followed by this 4th jury question about what will we be a hung jury if we can't agree on certain aspects of the verdict sheet. And the judge declined in answering the question. The defense actually asked for a caveat. They said, well, can you say I can't answer it at this time? So, Marky, what that says to me is the jurors probably know what happened during trial 1. They're not supposed to be considering that at all. But there obviously, there are some individuals in that jury room that have not come to an agreement. And based on the questions in the morning, it seems to signal, and again, we never really know, but it seems to signal that they are torn on the manslaughter. So that's the lower level of it, right? So there's second-degree murder. Maybe they've moved on from that. And it's all about the manslaughter, which includes the lesser included offenses. And the questions really seem to be pointed at that particular charge.
Yeah, manslaughter while operating a motor vehicle under the influence of liquor, and then also leaving the scene of an accident involving a death. What do you think the judge's strategy was there, Misty, in saying, I'm not going to answer that?
So I think the judge viewed this question as asking for a legal conclusion. What is a mistrial from, and that would be a legal question that would be improper. Whereas the defense viewed it as a more logistical question and said, well, this is exactly what happened during trial 1, where we don't really know what resulted in the mistrial with the jury because we didn't go through the charges and ask, well, were you hung on second-degree murder or manslaughter? And there was a lot of confusion after the fact regarding that. So I think the judge was just trying to stay away from making a legal conclusion, but ultimately resulting in something where we could find ourselves right back where we were during that first trial, because there is confusion about that verdict sheet very clearly.
And just comparing and contrasting the 2 trials that we've seen, I mean, the prosecution presented its case very differently this time around, but could end in the same outcome. Did you see any missteps that the state took that didn't prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Karen Reed's guilt?
Right. With this particular case, I think it's complicated because it comes down to a battle of the experts. And one of their experts that took the stand sounded very credible on direct, but on cross got annihilated because there had been some fabrications as to his credentials. And so I think that really undercut a lot of the prosecution's case in a case where you're really talking about experts being front and center. The other piece is the prosecution had a huge liability with Michael Proctor. That's the lead investigator. He really tanked the case for prosecutors during the first trial, and they did not call him this time. But because they didn't call him, the defense was able to capitalize on that and say, don't you think it's weird, jury, that the lead investigator of this case did not testify for the prosecution? So there were absolutely some vulnerabilities, but you know, the shoddy investigation in this case was something prosecutors needed to deal with. And it's where I really see the possibility for reasonable doubt being raised in this case. And we know there's a real dichotomy of views on this from the public perspective. Perhaps the same thing is going on in the jury room.
And we saw the lead investigator thrown off the case, fired because of misconduct there. You brought up something earlier that I want to go back to for a second. Another big question that's been brought up in both trials are those verdict slips. How often are jurors and juries confused by instructions?
It's not unusual for there to be some confusion. Remember, these verdict slips and the jury instructions, they're in legalese. And a lot of times in many trials, you hear the jury asking questions for various clarifications on those fronts. But here there was a specific, it was almost more of a visual issue, because the verdict sheet with respect to the second-degree murder, or excuse me, the second count of manslaughter, vehicular manslaughter, included these lesser included offenses. There was one box to check for not guilty. And this is below it, relating to those lesser includeds to check for guilty. And the defense said, well, this is going to create confusion. And Markey, clearly that is what happened. They wanted an edit, and ultimately the judge edited it after the question was asked. So there was a little bit of an issue with respect to that. And remember, in trial one, after the fact, jurors came back and said, well, we actually acquitted her on second-degree murder. We were only deadlocked on the manslaughter, but that never came out on the record. So the defense was really trying to get ahead of that issue the second time around.
Well, we'll see if we get some sort of verdict today or this week, but this has become, you know, quite the media craze. I mean, look outside that courthouse every day, too. Her protesters, her supporters as well. So all eyes on this one. Misty Marris, as always, thank you, and we'll catch you again soon.
Thank you.